speechlessness has never been a trait of Larry Bird's. The man who famously informed defenders exactly where he was going to shoot before actually doing it, spoke his way to 3 NBA titles, and once forced Michael Jordan to urge his teammates to stop talking has always had something to say. However, things were different this time. The greatest trash talker in NBA history was stunned speechless by Michael Jordan's passionate, unexpected, and profoundly respectful remark. This has nothing to do with competition or the never-ending argument over brilliance. The basketball world will never forget the moment when one legend honored another. Over the years, the French Open has hosted a wide range of famous people, including international rock stars and opera giants. However, nobody could have predicted what would happen when Asia's songbird, Regine Velasquez, showed up at the French Open. After selling out Carnegie Hall, performing for presidents, and becoming known as the voice of a generation, the 56-year-old legend accomplished something she had never done before. She entered Suzanne Linglein's court on a calm afternoon in Paris, grabbed a microphone, and performed a moving song for a 21-year-old tennis player who had just lost in the opening round. Everyone in attendance was taken aback by the moving tribute. The audience was brought to tears as the last notes reverberated across the stadium, rather than just cheering. Every moment of it was recorded. Alex bent over and took the crayon drawing. And my channel name is Smash Up. Elite opponents fearlessly and carry the aspirations of millions of Filipino fans, stood motionless. As she strained to comprehend what was happening in front of her eyes, her hand rested against her heart. It took place in Paris, France, on May 27, 2026. 47 p.m. on court Suzanne Lenglen, and everything changed in an instant that no one in the crowd could have foreseen. You must visualize the scene in order to comprehend the significance of what transpired. Alex Eala's career in the French Open was already over. She was still thinking about her first-round defeat against Iva Jovic and wondering what may have been. Just one day before, the Philippine flags that had crowded the stands had been folded, placed in suitcases, and transported to airport terminals. The hope of a strong tournament run had gradually faded throughout the night in Paris. Eala had come back to the grounds just to watch tennis, to sit among the spectators and re-establish her connection with the sport she loved, even on the days when it brought heartache, in an attempt to temporarily escape the disappointment. The last thing she expected was to be the center of attention once more. Fans flocked to court Suzanne Lenglen to witness a thrilling matchup between two rising talents in the second round. Every point elicited a roar from the stands, as flags waved throughout the audience, creating a buzz of excitement. With her mother by her side and her coaches a few rows behind, Eala sat calmly in the player's box. She was making every effort to blend in with the surroundings, wearing a basic white hoodie, her hair tied up, and no cosmetics on her face. She wanted nothing more than to be simply another fan in the throng for the first time in days. The music then started. It wasn't the well-known sound of a pre-recorded song or stadium anthem reverberating over the speakers. This was something different, something personal, strong, and unavoidable. Clear and distinct, a voice emerged from the middle of the court, resonating throughout the entire stadium. Everyone's attention was immediately caught by the opening notes. Fans ceased to converse. They raised phones into the air. Players and spectators turned in bewilderment and wonder toward the source of the sound, and even the game itself seemed to pause. Regine Velasquez was standing close to the baseline, holding a microphone. The songbird of Asia has reached Roland Garros, the renowned performer who had enthralled audiences all across the world for decades, packed esteemed concert halls, sang for presidents, and emerged as one of the most renowned voices of her generation. During some of the most iconic events in Filipino history, she performed for millions of people. She had never done something quite like this, though, despite all of her achievements. She had never set foot on a tennis court to pay tribute to a young athlete who had just suffered the heartbreak of losing in the first round of a Grand Slam. An amazing silence descended upon the throng as her words reverberated across the stadium. Thousands of onlookers listened in silence. The players were motionless. Alex Eala was swiftly located by cameras, and the expression on her face conveyed the whole narrative. Tears filled her eyes, and her hand shot to her mouth. She seemed overwhelmed, finding it difficult to understand what was going on. What had started out as a typical Roland Garros afternoon had evolved into a very intimate homage to her tenacity, bravery, and the role she had played as an inspiration to so many. The crowd erupted as the last note vanished into the Paris air. Fans stood up, and court Suzanne Lenglen was met with thunderous acclaim. However, The performance was just the start. Regine Velasquez looked to the player's box after lowering the microphone. She started marching straight toward the young tennis player, who had come to represent pride and hope for millions of Filipinos worldwide, with a purposeful gait and emotive gaze. With a soft yet powerful voice that could be heard throughout the quiet stadium, she murmured, "Alex, I'm doing this for you. Not because you prevailed, but because you battled. Since you never gave up. Because you served as a reminder to everyone that you are not a loser just because you lose a match." She then reached out to the young tennis player. Time appeared to stop for a split second. As the voice of a generation, Regine Velasquez stood on the renowned red clay of Roland Garros and reached out to a player whose tournament adventure had ended much sooner than she had intended. The cameras filmed every moment. It was a picture that would soon be on television screens and social media platforms all around the world. Alex Eala got up slowly from her chair. She stretched forward and grasped Regine's hand, her legs shaking and tears welling up in her eyes. She was overcome with emotion and found it difficult to speak. "I'm at a loss for words," she said. Regine gave a kind grin. She said, "You don't have to say anything. Just keep battling. Continue being who you. I came for precisely that reason." Regine's eyes strayed for a second as she considered her own path. She went on, "I've been where you are. In my profession, not on a tennis court. I've put out albums that didn't go as well as I had hoped. I've had performances that weren't my finest. Critics have told me that my time was over. There were times when I wanted to leave everything behind. However, I didn't because giving up would have been a failure. Making errors, losing, and struggling are all aspects of the path." Alex paid close attention, taking in every word. "How did you manage to continue?" she inquired. Regine grinned and leaned back. "I recalled my motivation for beginning. I recalled my passion for my work, the happiness it brought me, and the people who supported me when I wasn't always able to believe in myself. That is precisely what you must keep in mind. Imagine the supporters flying banners on your behalf. Consider the individuals who watch every game, every win, and every defeat. They don't just support you based on your performance. Your heart, your effort, and your determination to keep fighting are the reasons they are rooting for you." Before continuing, Alex briefly lowered her gaze. She spoke in a barely audible whisper. "Tita Regine said, I'm afraid. I'm afraid I won't ever achieve a Grand Slam. I'm afraid that people will always think of me as the player who almost succeeded but fell short." Between them, the confession lingered. It has nothing to do with the anxiety of losing a single game. Every athlete who dares to dream big shares this fear, the possibility that their biggest ambition would always remain just out of grasp. And Alex let herself speak it out for the first time since coming to Paris. After paying close attention, Regine responded in a way that Alex would never forget. She whispered softly, "Maybe you'll win a Grand Slam one day, and maybe you won't. However, that is not the most important thing. It matters that you continue to inspire the millions of people who recognize themselves in your journey and that you continue to show up and fight." She grinned and gave Alex's hand a squeeze. The Alex Eala effect is that winning every game is not the goal. It involves bravery, tenacity, and a will to give up. In that sense, you're already a champion. They ate breakfast for almost 2 hours. They discussed music, tennis, dreams, family, and the common experiences of representing the Philippines abroad. Regine talked about her early career failures, doubts, disappointments, and times when she wasn't sure if she should keep on. Alex paid close attention, taking in every memory and instruction. What started out as a straightforward brunch eventually developed into a discussion about purpose, resilience, and the responsibility that comes with motivating others. When it was finally time to go, Regine took a small box out of her luggage and gave it to Alex. She said, "This is for you. Later, open it." Overcome with emotion and at a loss for words, Alex nodded. Back in her hotel room that night, she cautiously opened the present. There was a lovely gold necklace within. A tiny pendant in the shape of the Philippines hung from the chain. Its simplicity was stunning, but the words inscribed on the back in exquisite script, "Laban, always," were what drew her eye. "You're not by yourself." Alex just gazed at the jewelry for a few moments. She then put it around her neck. It was more than jewelry in that moment. It served as a reminder of what she had discovered during those trying times in Paris. A representation of tenacity, faith, and the innumerable people who support her. Long after the tournament was over, she would wear it for the rest of her time in France. It would go with her to practices, games, triumphs, and setbacks. She would touch the pendant and recall the inscription on its back, that she was never carrying the weight alone, every time doubt began to creep into her thoughts. The French Open progressed in the meantime. Eventually, new champions would hoist trophies on the renowned red clay as new stars rose to prominence and new narratives developed. However, a championship game or trophy presentation would not rank among the tournament's most memorable moments for many spectators. It would be the tale of a young athlete who, after losing, finds strength and is reminded of why she started the quest in the first place by an unanticipated act of generosity. The competition would proceed. New stories would grab the attention of the entire globe, new champions would be crowned, and new headlines would rule the sports pages. However, Alex Eala would take something much more intimate home with her long after the last trophy was raised. The gold necklace she wore around her neck and the recollection of the woman who gave it to her. 17 a.m. On May 29, 2026, the Alex was getting ready to depart Paris when he arrived at Charles de Gaulle Airport. Officially, she was leaving the tournament without having won anything. However, she was departing with something far more significant on an emotional level than a spot in the draw. The words and music that had given her confidence back were still in her heart, and a gold pendant shaped like the Philippines hung around her neck. The airport was a hive of activity. Tourists got ready for their trips home, business executives checked flight itineraries, and travelers rushed toward departure gates. However, a small group of people had assembled for a different purpose next to the Philippine Airlines check-in area. They weren't celebs looking for attention or reporters chasing headlines. They were regular Filipinos who worked and lived overseas. Families, students, engineers, nurses, and carers who had come just to bid farewell to an inspiration. They had Philippine flags in their hands. They carried signs that were made by hand. As they watched her approach, some of them suppressed their emotions. "You made us proud, Alex. When you return, we'll be here. Always, Laban." Through the terminal, the words trailed behind her. Alex welcomed each supporter individually, her mother walking by her with her racket bag slung over one.